I'm serious.
Nice.
It's a fight.
I just think that's a general way everybody.
Yeah.
sees it anymore.
Yeah, I'm nobody special.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter.
Award or not, yeah. I don't count that as nothing. So,
Well, we're proud of you.
well, thank you. At least somebody is. Sure.
You want one, Taylor?
Sure.
I couldn't tell you the last time I grabbed one.
Yeah, me either.
I was doing good for a while. I even was bringing my folder that they go in. And then I
But,
started grabbing them.
yeah, as we just talk and
Jeff,
kind of don't, do we follow this?
Yeah,
We do.
usually.
Oh, okay.
Mostly goes in order. Every once in a while it does.
So, how are you? I paid today.
Did you get paid right?
You know, I don't know.
Study sheets are on the back pew if anybody doesn't have one.
Me getting for sports, and I'm like,
your father-in-law
no, because
improving?
I don't keep track of it.
Is your father-in-law,
It's okay. Just look.
Up
It's a
in
nice
lights?
one. Yes, he's doing
I know
great.
I won't get paid like the whole summer, so that's why I have to keep track of it.
I got my notes out tonight, this morning. I thought, I'm losing my mind. I never ever have one, but I'm losing mine.
Hey,
We had
that was rude.
I know
it
it.
was hectic. Whenever those tournaments come and people, you know, Brad's like, you're not gonna work long, but I need help. And I told him,
It comes in waves for those. Oh, it's awful.
no, it was, ain't never, the last time. And then I had Nando, and I told him, you know, we talk
Oh,
all
for
the time.
regionals? Is
Yes,
that what you meant?
yes,
Oh,
yes.
yes, that's awful. All at once, and then you're
All
done.
at once, and then boom. But I have to have somebody do tickets, so it goes great.
Yeah.
So I told him before the game, because he's like, I'm gonna be there, Rich, aren't you excited? I said, you have to help me with tickets. I said, Brad helped me somewhat last time until I couldn't. I said, so if you do tickets and I do the money, he goes, it's that bad? I'm like, you know it is. And he was like, you, and when he was doing tickets, and mind you, he's chit chatting.
Oh, yeah.
I said, this is why I told him you can't chit chat, it's like 100 people. And he goes, and
Thank you.
he goes, you would have never made it by yourself. I said, well, I would have, but they would have been in the parking lot. And then we got a line that he goes, I want to hear this girl sing national anthem. I said, and then the people said, no, go. Yeah, because she's fantastic. I was like, you can't go hear her.
I'm sorry, these people want to get in.
Thank you.
This is a history question.
Okay.
Way back in 1978,
Where you going?
coming back from Monroe.
I don't know what I did with them.
Stopped at Monroe
What are you looking
Church,
for?
and the guy from
My
the
notes
United
for
States
tonight.
of the Universe.
It's all right,
Who was he?
I've got the original book
I
set.
don't know, he didn't have Revelation.
It's just small, I can't read it, it's small.
Hebrews and Romans and,
Yeah, I got
I wonder who we was, you didn't get a name?
Was it? It was June of 78. I didn't write
You was a
that
kid
one.
probably this
Oh,
year.
it was 78, I wasn't even at York yet.
Okay.
I got to thinking that.
I wouldn't know it. Yeah, I don't know.
You were very old then.
What year did you,
Oh, yeah.
what
Well, I
years did you
was
go
like-
there?
I went in 83 to 85.
Oh, okay.
And the guy, Jay Brewster, he is president of Pepperdine that I went to school with
Oh,
right now.
oh,
And not to say that's good, because I remember our Bible teacher said, you know, schools stay away from the big ones, Pepperdine. And now he's president.
yeah.
I
I'm
want
like,
to say
well,
James, I mean, I think was first name, but I'm not sure.
James
I think
Hinkle?
we're-
Huh?
James Hinkle, maybe. He was my Hebrews teacher.
I think we're about ready to get started. I'm sorry, I'm so disorganized tonight. So, I was being asked how's Dwayne, he's doing better. Sydney's still improving. I was gonna go see Sydney, and I yesterday or today, and I told him that, said, I spent the whole weekend with my grandson, who has a cold, and who coughed and sneezed on us all weekend. So I said, I think I better not come, because I've started hacking up my lungs the last couple of days, so
Jeff,
he said, okay,
will there be an address when Sydney goes to Madison to send her card?
I'll try and get one.
Okay. When does he go to Madison?
He doesn't know, but he told me he thought if I waited till the first of the week to come, he thought he'd be gone, so.
Why Madison?
So it was the closest one his insurance would do, and, you know, they wanted to do it local, but the other choice was Dubuque or Chicago, so they took Madison. Allison's family, keep them in your prayers. Jan's sister-in-law, Nancy, Jan's brother's got dementia, Alzheimer's, and is in pretty bad shape, and his wife, they decided to go ahead and shut off her pacemaker and things. She's going down very, very quickly, and she didn't want to keep getting shocked nonstop. So she's probably not long for the world. She's in a hospice facility. So anyway, a vibrant faith. That's where we're at tonight from Revelation. We'll be in Revelation chapter 3, verses 15 and 16. Jesus said, I know your works, that you are neither cold nor hot. He said, I wish you were just one or the other. But because you're lukewarm, neither hot nor cold, I'm about to spit you out of my mouth. You know, that's what you feel when you go for a drink. You could stand it if it's hot. You can stand it if it's cold, but like me, I'll have to make my coffee in the morning, forget it for an hour or two, and I take a sip, and it's just disgusting at that point. And I love coffee, hot or cold. It's not in between. Yeah. Plus, I get bugs in them in there anymore this time of year. But, you know, God says, I wish you'd do nothing at all rather than just do enough. And so that's what tonight's about. It's about the concept of God doesn't want us to just do just enough to get by. Work or don't. But don't be in between. So, this is Jesus' final message to the believers in Laodicea. It's a rich city, kind of like some of the others. That's why if you get a theme that keeps happening, the cities they're picking are big cities and a lot of trade. And that makes sense. If you're going to plant the church, go to the place where a lot of people are coming and going, a lot of movement, so that the word will spread even faster and further. It's a major trade route. It's about 45 miles from Philadelphia. And in those days, that's a long way between churches. 45 miles is. They specialized in a production of a glossy black wool fabric. That was their big thing. It was traded all over the Middle East. Now, one of the reasons Jesus picked this concept of you're lukewarm, there are a lot of springs right around the city. And there's hot springs that intermingle with cold springs, which means you get lukewarm. And so it said that the water was poor quality and lukewarm. There just was no source for good cold water to drink, no good well water. And obviously with hot springs, you get a lot of, okay, science majors, what? That means you're getting a lot of minerals, because it's coming up from deep, yeah. And so, okay, science fact here. It just made me think of it. There's a guy that does wells that I watched sometime, like underground water wells. And he went back to what he had done 2 years ago because they were having some issues. And when he took a camera down there, stalactites were growing from the mineralization. And he said, you know, they tell us that it takes millions of years to form it, but I've got some now that are already 2 and 3 feet long. Mm-hmm. You know, this big around. So he said, who are they to tell us it takes millions of years when they're not watching them grow? So anyway, you've got this water source that's polluted, and so he uses that. The people that he's talking to, it seemed to have mastered the art of compromise. Now, just be honest, do we compromise on things now?
Yes.
As Christians, do we?
Yeah.
What sort of things are we compromising on in our lives?
In our life.
What are things that we wouldn't have done 20 years ago as Christians in our personal life that happen around us and we're accepting of it or tolerant of it or whatever?
Well, one thing, there didn't used to be any sports activities on Wednesday nights.
Or Sundays? Mm-hmm.
Not so anymore.
Town I grew up in, stores weren't even open on Sundays.
Yeah.
They were in the afternoon. After 1 o'clock, grocery stores could open. Nothing else could.
Ours, the drugstore was open Sunday morning, so after church, you could pick up prescriptions. They closed at noon, In fact, in Europe, my counterparts used to tell me, when I come over, which I didn't have to, don't plan on getting anything on Sunday.
That's right. When we lived there, you couldn't shop on Sunday. Sunday was a time for church and family and spending the day with friends or exercise in the park or whatever. Yeah, stores were closed. So now we're not doing that anymore. What else?
TV shows,
The TV we watch.
compromise there. Ozzie and Harriet were in separate beds and they were married.
Yeah, which I always thought was a little strange. Where did the little Aussies come from? But we compromise on what we'll allow ourselves to watch. Not just our kids, you know. We're also careful when the kids are like, "Oh, we better turn that off." Grandkids come over, "Ooh, turn that off." Sometimes they say bad things. If it's not good enough for the kids, really, it shouldn't be good enough for us. Kevin?
This is just me looking at school-wise, maybe not Christian-wise, but in school, I see discipline severely compromised. There are rules and guidelines, and one of them is no hats, no pajama pants. What do we see every day? Hats, pajama pants.
That's
Well,
what that's on, yeah.
But I guess this past week, something must have happened because it's all kind of like they absolutely cannot wear hats. The hat thing is big. So there was an announcement that, and you know, before they didn't care if you wore a hat. I don't understand that, but they didn't make them take them off. So now it's all kind of pushed back with these hats because they're making them take them off. And the principal announced no hats anymore, absolutely zero hats. They put their hoodies on and try to, you know, cover up the hats. And I told a kid today 4 times, and he got mad at me. I said, and the 4th time I said, why do you keep putting your hat back on? There's an announcement, and then he goes, why are they so strict now about hats? I said, I know, I get it, before you got away with it, but you can't wear a hat, or they're gonna send you home. Well, let them send me home, I'm not taking my hat off. And I was like, oh, and I don't fight, you know. So.
Yeah.
Well, I think back, like Cindy was talking about in school, up through 6th grade, we started the day with the Pledge of Allegiance and ended with a prayer in public school.
And we do Pledge of Allegiance. That's one thing they have kept, and I appreciate that. Every day is Pledge of Allegiance.
You know, another thing that,
But do you know what's fascinating about that? At the elementary level, they mandate the kids to stand still. At the high school, it's optional
Yeah.
to stand.
And most of them don't stand.
There's a little sigh for you.
you know, in the military, there's a concept, you don't have to like the person, you salute the rank.
Yeah.
And you don't have to love our country, you don't have to love our leaders, you don't have to love, but we still live in a pretty great country.
That's right.
So at least show respect to the nation that we're a part of. And, you know, all of like the hats and stuff, you may have noticed, I know I definitely have, a resurgence because some people think Trump is certain ways, a resurgence of racism in our own community. And I know racism's always there. I'm not living in Candyland or something, but I've seen a resurgence of Confederate flags being flown and of people outwardly wearing signs of hate that had kind of gone away. And I told you my best friend when we moved from here back in the early 90s to Atlanta, he said the difference between Chicago and Atlanta, he said in Georgia, if somebody doesn't like you because of your color, they'll tell you they don't like you because of your color. They're open. In Chicago, it's the same people, but they just stab you in the back because they won't say it. They're too cultured for that. So we know racism still exists. We see it all the time. But when it makes a resurgence, it scares you. It scares me for what we're turning into. So there's a lot of things that we, every day, you know, I think of Gail Gerber, euphemisms. She's talking about euphemisms all the time, but we hear it, and we not only hear it, we hear it in the pulpit, or you know, there's people that do the communion or something. And I know some of those words aren't necessarily bad in and of themselves. You know, there's a lot of words that can be very bad in one generation, another generation they're not bad. But to me, those words are still disrespectful in a public place. And by the way, I still hold to the thought, if you can't speak decent English, then you're ignorant. And I'm not talking about grammatically correct, I don't care about that, or tenses or anything. I'm talking about if you can't think of words to express yourself better than curse words, you're just ignorant.
Well, I watched the State of the Union last night, and whether you agree or disagree with it, the courtesy is gone, even at that congressional level, which to me shouldn't be tolerated. And that you need to be courteous whether you agree with it or not.
In other
But it
words,
isn't at the highest level.
in England, they scream and shout at each other all during their parliamentary meetings. In South American countries, they actually go to throwing chairs and fist fighting, and we're not far behind. We're not far behind. From the time you could boo somebody to now, they just, again, we're making compromises in our lives. And so Jesus looks at them and says, there is nothing good to say about you. Everyone else, he said, well, at least you got this going for you. But fix that. I told you my role has always been in mentoring and in leadership as a boss was always, if I had to talk to somebody, you start out with the things they're doing well, you tell them what they need to fix, and you end with the things that you're really proud of them for. And that's it's that teaspoon of sugar, right? It makes the medicine go down. But it showed them, you're not a failure. Just work on these things. Jesus says, you're a failure. There is nothing redeeming about how you're acting, church. And how horrible is that, Kenneth?
And the lukewarm part for Christians, you're not productive. I think it can also hurt the church greatly. When you're lukewarm, you just like compromise and do anything. You can go left or you can go right. So I think, Jesus is pointing this out. Lukewarm is not good.
Yeah, JC, what did he say about the fig tree?
Fig tree that didn't produce fruit?
Give it another season and cut it.
He said, we'll give you one more chance. But if by next year you're not producing, cut it down.
James says if you're tossed around like waves,
There was another account where it was,
That was when he was on the road walking with his disciples.
I want to use the word cursed. The tree was cursed right then and there.
Jesus touched it, and it died because it looked beautiful, but there was no fruit on it. And see, there's another thing. You can look great, but you can be, as the Bible says again, like whitewashed what? Grave. You're pretty on the outside, but you are full of dead and decay inside. Dead men's bones. So anyway, he says, Jesus tries to soften the blow to him. He says in 3:19, now listen, those who I love, I rebuke them and I discipline them. If he didn't love us, what would he do? Ignore it.
Leave us to our own devices.
No, go to Walmart and see parents who ignore their children's behaviors and think, you don't even love your kid enough to tell them stop that. All right. So when you consider your faith in Christ, I usually put the question up there, but I didn't. Do you consider yourself to be on the hot side, which is active and growing, or are you on the cold side, which means you're just spiritually stuck? And it can be a mindset that I'm too old to do anything anyway, so I sit back. Or lukewarm. Where should our faith be? On the hot side. You're never too old to serve God. The way you serve might change, but the level of service should never change. You do all that you can do with what you're able to do. I texted the leader of Labor Day retreat for RCC. I said, I'm willing to help. If you have a spot for me, let me know. And then I put the caveat within the limitations that I've given you the last few years. In other words, I'm not going to be the program director anymore. I'm not running all day with those kids. That's done. But I will teach, or I will be the nurse, or whichever they need me for. Or I'll even cook, or wash dishes, whatever. Okay, so here's our reading for today, 14 to 22. To the angel of the church in Laodicea write, the Amen, the faithful, and the true witness, the origin of the creation of God, says this. By the way, what verse in the New Testament cements that idea that he is the origin of the creation of God?
John 1:1.
John 1:1. In the beginning was the Word was with God, the Word was God, and nothing that was created without him. So John 1:1, he is the origin of creation. And he says, I know this, I know your deeds, that you are neither hot nor cold, or cold nor hot. I wish that you were cold or hot. So because you are lukewarm and neither hot nor cold, I will vomit you out of my mouth. Because you say, I'm rich and have become wealthy and I have no need of anything, and you do not know that you are wretched, miserable, poor, blind, and naked. I advise you to buy from me gold refined by fire so that you may become rich. I think the word we need to add in there between become and rich is what? Think of the word.
Spiritual?
Spiritual or truly rich is the word I was thinking, but yes, spiritual rich. That way we understand it a little better. But anyway, and white garments so that you may clothe yourself, and the shame of your nakedness will not be revealed. And an eye salve to apply to your eyes so that you may see. To those whom I love, I rebuke and discipline. Therefore, be zealous and repent. Behold, I stand at the door and I knock, and if anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come into him and will dine with him, and he with me. The one who overcomes, I will grant to him to sit with me on my throne, as I also overcame and sat with my Father on his throne. The one who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. So, I said Philadelphia again in the beginning, by the way. I'm sorry, it's loud to see it. But what was his primary complaint again? That they were
Lukewarm.
They were fence raiders.
They were fence riders, that's right. They were lukewarm. The word, the Greek word there means just exactly as we translate it, lukewarm or complacent. You know, what factors may have led to this complacency? What are some of the things that go around and make us complacent? It's no different than then.
Living the good life.
Well, verse 18 says you become rich,
Okay?
which is not necessarily in itself wrong, but the way John's addressing it here seems to have a negative connotation.
Yeah, you become rich, so you think you don't need God, is basically what he's saying.
Or if your life is going well and you're like, wow, this is good life, so I don't need to do anything.
Mhm.
So maybe that's how they were. They're wealthy. They don't
Yeah,
they don't have to answer to anybody.
One thing people don't realize, they come here and they ask for the church to help them with a benevolence thing. And really what they're saying to me when they come, they say, boy, I really need to get back to church. In other words, when you had what you wanted, you didn't need God. Now you want someone to help you, and so you say you need God, but I know you don't really think you need God. And it won't be until you hit rock bottom that you'll think, maybe I did need God. But by then, it's too late for us to help you. I mean, you know, it's never too late, but you know what I mean. Go ahead. You were going to say what, Mike?
Well, verse 17, along with what was just heard. You say, I am rich, I have acquired wealth, and do not need a thing.
In other words, you don't think you need me. Yeah.
When it's about me, myself, and I've reached that, then look out. I mean, that's a red flag.
So, what does complacency in the modern day church look like? Again, it looks the same as then, but anyway, what are some things, if you walk into a church and you look at it and you say, I don't think I want to be here. Now, I'll give you one example. When we moved from Freeport to Georgia, we tried all the congregations around where we lived. And one of them we went to, and they asked us to go out to lunch with them, and then the guy said, you're on Army per diem, you know, which is paid to eat every day. Said, you want to just get the check? Okay. But I asked them, I said, what are you guys doing to grow? And they said, oh, we go to South America. And I said, no, what are you doing locally to grow? Because this was the fastest growing county in Georgia. So what are you doing for the church growing? He said, oh, nothing, we got to build a new building, and so we're happy. I said, well, we won't be back, but thank you for me buying you lunch. Anyway.
If you're in the wilderness and you need water, you look for moving water, not a stagnant pond. I think this compares to what he's talking about here. If they were moving, doing something, if they were encouraging one another, then it would be acceptable, but they're stagnant.
Okay? So stagnant, not wanting to grow.
I can tell you what complacency is for a church that I went to visit. And I think I told you when Jennifer was trying to find a church, but she had been going to that church for a year. And she couldn't pinpoint like what was going on. She said, something's going on. So we figured it out right away when we went to visit. Not friendly, nobody greeted us, nobody after church, like how you guys stand at the door, not one soul was at the door, so they could have cared less if we were there or not. Which I wrote a letter and let them know, like, brothers, this is not good. And Jennifer said she went back the next week, everybody was standing at the door. So she was like, they got your letter. But now they're in the same spot, she's saying. She went back and she goes, it bothers me so bad that they don't greet people and they're cliquey. And she said, and I just want to let them know, I'm not comfortable at a church like that. So that's complacency, like, they go preach and then they just sit down and don't say nothing to anybody.
When we last visited my sister's congregation, nobody said a word to us.
Yeah.
We walk out the door and nobody says a word. And at that point, when nobody speaks to me, I just go get in the car. And that's what others do. We're the same way. And I've got down here, I've got in my notes, no effort from the members to do anything. Just no effort.
How about remind you of the rich man that came up to Jesus and asked what have I lacked?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, Laodicea, that's kind of what.
Yeah, what do I lack? Well, this is what you lack. Well, I can't fix that. I'm not going to change that. That's basically what the rich man said, didn't he? He went away sorrowful because he was not willing to sell what he had for the kingdom of heaven. And that's what it is. We look around and say, well, we're not growing, but we're okay with that. When you stop as a baby growing, what do you start doing? Same thing with church. If you stop growing, you really start dying. How about in James chapter 1, verses 6 to 8, it says, but ask in faith without doubting, for the one who doubts is like the surf of the sea, driven and tossed by the wind. For that person should not expect that he will receive anything from the Lord, because he's a double-minded man, unstable in his way. That's the problem with being lukewarm. You're just driven by any wind, anything that comes along. I mentioned now, I did not say that because we're broadcasting, but not because it's anybody here or anybody of our church, but I don't want it to affect someone in the community. So, but it's if you can be driven just by every wind that comes along.
It's kind of like, what's the new fad?
Yeah.
And then we'll swing that way. I mean, there was a congregation here in the area that was growing leaps and bounds, and now I think it's.
I was reading just an article just this weekend. Max Lucado is at a church, and they've changed their name to just be a whatever church.
Community.
And yeah, it's a community kind of vibe. And the question was, didn't you come from a non-instrumental background? He goes, yes, but I've decided that's not that important. And he said, but we still have one service. We do 3 services on Sunday morning, and one of them is non-instrumental. One is contemporary, upbeat. One is musical, praise groups and music. And one is non-instrumental music. And he says, that's so that everyone is satisfied. What's that really say to you in your mind?
Compromising your belief.
You're
Cafeteria,
compromising.
pick and choose.
Pick and choose, what else?
Tickling ears.
Yeah. And also to me as a preacher, it says, I don't really care about the group as a whole. I want to make my happy, so I'll do what Mike wants. I don't care if their 2 views are opposing and it causes someone to stumble. I'm just going to do what I can to make the most people happy. And if we lose people in the middle, that's okay. I don't care.
But look how many people are following.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And Max Lucado, he knows better. That's the thing. How he started, I remember reading a great book. No wonder they called him the Savior. Mm-hmm. And then, and then he compromised beliefs, like he went and preached at any type of church.
Most of his books are wonderful.
Yeah. Yes.
I hate to admit it to you, but this book we're studying out of is a Max Lucado book from a long time ago. Most of his books are wonderful.
Yeah.
But it's what he preaches in the pulpit.
Yeah.
Then he got famous. Lots of radio shows, TV.
You've heard me say before, the greatest study on Hebrews that I've ever had was a class from Rubel Shelley, and he was my teacher at Lipscomb for that class, and I loved it. And so I went to a very conservative congregation in Georgia for a while, and they said, how dare you mention his book on Hebrews? And I said, well, just because he's not doing what we believe now doesn't mean what he wrote then. But that congregation said I wasn't allowed to use his books or his name ever in the future. Okay. I had a guy who would give me every week an update on the things that he had said that were horrible. And it's like, I don't care. I don't like, he's not my friend. He was a professor. But anyway, if we're lukewarm, we're just kind of tossed around. It doesn't matter anymore. Now, why, given that Jesus uses words that indicate poverty. The wretched, pitiful, poor, blind, and naked. Those indicate in their language poverty. So how can he say you're impoverished but yet you're rich?
Spiritually bereft.
Spiritually bereft. You're using big words too tonight. Spiritually bereft. Yeah. I know that's a word. Now define bereft and spell it.
B-E-R-E-F-T.
I think there's an I. B-E-R-I-F-T. We're close enough.
No.
No,
that's-
there
No? I haven't done my Wordle for the day, so I haven't
It was
exercised
a
my brain
crossword.
yet.
But it's
But
spiritually lacking.
you can be rich in one area and totally lacking in the other. The richest person in the world that has terminal cancer is not getting out of the cancer. Doesn't matter. The poorest man in the world with good health is going to live a long, happy life, even though they're poor. Spiritually, if we are poor, we will never find true happiness. You might find something for the moment that's enjoyable, but in the long run, you're not going to find true happiness. So what do you say? Yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I always remember my mother telling me, I'm probably paraphrasing, but she says, understand happiness comes from within. Don't look outside for it, or you more likely won't find it.
This is true. This is true. So what did he say? What does Jesus say it's going to take for him to get out of this miserable state? Verse 18 of Revelation 3 tells it, but someone describe it, define it. (3:18). Three things he tells him to do.
It says, clothe yourself.
Open your eyes.
Close yourself, open your eyes, one more. It starts with this one, everybody jumped over it. He says, buy from me gold that's been refined. In other words, what's Jesus saying?
True riches.
Huh?
True riches.
Eternal riches, true riches, refined gold, pure, get the pure wealth. Not the physical wealth.
Where moth and rust destroy,
Yes.
so to speak.
The white garment signifying what?
Virginity.
Purity.
Purity, cleanliness, no stain. And again, remember I mentioned some of it about the tie that I had on the other week, that I got a spot during lunch on it, and it seemed to just glow. That spot did. It was, maybe I was telling Kayla about it as we were working on taxes for hours and hours. Anyway, that one spot just seemed to glow, and it was driving me crazy. That's the way our sin does. It just glows to people around us. What do you learn in this passage about who Jesus is and what he does? What does Jesus hate in this passage? Don't say lukewarmness. Come on, give me another word for it.
Wishy-washy.
Okay, that's a good word.
That's a hyphenated.
He wants us to be committed to him.
He hates being mediocre. Don't be mediocre. Don't be just good enough.
All in.
Yeah, it's all or nothing. It demands effort. It demands effort. All right, so Jesus Jesus and his disciples, they're walking down the road one day to Jerusalem, and they spend the night in Bethany, and we're going to JC's story. I forgot I'd written it down here. He sees a fig tree, he approaches the tree, he says, even though it had leaves, there's no fruit. The appearance of nutrition, but there was no nutrition to be found in the tree. And it's all promise and no performance. The symbolism was too precise for Jesus to ignore, so he does to the tree on Monday morning what he's going to do to the temple that Monday afternoon. He curses it. He says, you're dead. You know, you're worthless. He's angry at was he angry about a tree that had no fruit? He's angry at a tree, at something that promises fruit and really has none. It's what it represented. It represents living a lie. And so Jesus is disgusted by lukewarm, by placid, by vanity, pomp but no purpose. And that's what he hates about us when we're putting on this face of something that drives me crazy, holier than thou, and you're really not. He hates that. It's empty religion. And so look at the Laodicean church. That's what they represent. An empty religion. Wealthy, self-sufficient. I think of some of the people I know that they'll go to church after partying so hard the night before. You know, it's like you're living just such a double standard. Or these people that I know I thought I'd forgotten them. I started to say these people that, and I thought I'd forgotten an appointment, but I remember it now. But they live, because they live one way. I know these people. They live one way, but they try to tell you that they're different. And it's like, you're really not. And so Jesus is, I'm going to spit you out. You're a waste of time. Literally, I'm going to vomit. I'm going to puke you up. You know, I'm just going to get rid of you. Have you ever eaten something that immediately your body says, no, you got to go? Is there anything more miserable than that? I mean,
Freedom in the toilet's worse.
yeah. So it's your body's way of saying, I reject this. You know, bad shellfish. That's the worst thing in the world. You know? So, what's the point? God can't stomach religion when it's not true religion, when it's a show. So, why is being lukewarm in your faith incompatible with being a follower of Jesus? I'm talking about you specifically. Why are the two incompatible?
For me, that's not my spirit. Being lukewarm, so I want to be hot Christ, and I think pretty much I try to be that. So it's not compatible. It's not what a Christian should be, lukewarm.
And I get to you, Steve, if you're living an incompatible life in yourself, what does that do to you in the long run?
What it can do is it can fool you into thinking that you're safe.
Okay, so you can convince yourself that you're safe when you're really not. What else? What's the opposite of that? It can make you depressed, make you anxious, because you want to live one way, but you know it's wrong, and so you really hate yourself every time you do it. Every time you do these things. Steve, you were going to say?
I already said, it leads to a foolish or deceitful conclusion.
Yeah.
Also leaves you disillusioned.
Mm-hmm.
You see things like on TV or whatever. Well, you see things differently than what they're portrayed. That may or may not be the case, but oftentimes it leads you to disillusionment in your own life. See yourself as being, we need to be more positive. What effects we can have and how important we can be sometimes to other people. So, don't delude yourself.
Because you're really not fooling anybody in the long run. How?
Right.
It makes you, I think as much as anything, it makes you look at everybody around you and assume everybody has the same problem that you have. You reject even if their religion is true, you reject it because you can't understand it.
At Lipscomb, every student within the 4 years was mandatory. You could not graduate without taking marriage in the Christian family class. And it was a pretty frank discussion. So usually it wasn't for the freshmen. However, if you were seriously dating someone or you were engaged, your RA in the dorm would sign you up for the class. You had to take it. And so I took it and found out just 4 or 5 years later that the person, Dean McWin Craig, that I loved and I thought his class was so good, and I had built so much of my marriage counseling as a minister over the, a youth minister over these 40 years, on what I learned from there, he was living a lie. He was homosexual. He was with another member of the church, and his sons tried to get him to repent, to change, and especially they said, you're the dean of students at this college, and you're teaching the class about a Christian home and family. And so they finally just said, you're done. And they went to the board of directors for the school, and they went to the elders of his congregation, and they said, this is what Dad's doing, and the only way we can get him to repent is to out him publicly. And what it did is it broke so many hearts. It didn't break my relationship with Allison. It didn't change what I knew to be right. And it didn't change the words that he said biblically that were right. But it hurt me that another brother had lived this life for so long and hurt so many churches. And now, just a few years later, my own cousin, who's been a youth leader in their church for so many years, and found out he'd been having an affair for years and years, and it destroyed a generation of young people. And many of them left the church because he had been living such a blatant lie. And that's what we can do really easily, kind of where you were going. All right, that's 2. So, let me get real quick. Signs of complacency in a church. I marked this down. 1, you are too easily satisfied. That's a sign of complacency. You are quick to make excuses about the things that are going right or wrong. Why are you wrong? You say there's never enough time to do the good things, the right things that you should do. Liam asked me yesterday, he called and says, you want to come pick me up? Or he said, are you busy? And I said, do you ever know me when I'm not busy? No, you never sit down. I said, right. He said, unless you've broken your knee again. So, you're no longer teachable, or the church is no longer teachable, and you're content with early successes or easy successes. All right, we're going to stop there.